right, here he is, the legendary bass player. I think only the second bassist that's ever been on this show, only alongside Jeff Pilson. It's Rudy Sarzo from Ozzy, Whitesnake,
Hey.
Dio, Quiet Riot, a million other bands. Rudy, what's going on, man?
Oh, just enjoying a beautiful day and getting ready to go back on the road in a couple of weeks. We just took a little break from Quiet Riot touring, and it looks like it's going to be a beautiful, busy summer. And yeah, all good. I noticed that you have a WMMS shirt on.
Yeah, it's a legendary rock station in Cleveland. Not quite what it was
Yeah,
back in the day. It's really focused on more talk radio, and then the only music they play is like 90s and 2000s alternative, and then AC/DC and Led Zeppelin every other song. But yeah, legendary rock station broke a lot of bands. I think probably most notably,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the radio station that broke Rush in the United States, if I recall.
Well, that's right. Cleveland has the tradition of being a test market. Um, and when we in Quiet Riot in 1983, we did the lunchtime session
Oh, I think they at the Odeon. Oh,
At
the
the
Agora.
Agora.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, at the Agora. It was like a lunchtime show, and we were playing in somewhere else in town, and or probably in tour on tour with one of the bands that we supported during that summer that year, and it was amazing. I think I still got swag from 40 years ago, WMMS.
Wow, I bet you that's probably worth some money, especially locally around here in Ohio. I mean, it's it was a big thing, and obviously we also got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and
Absolutely, yeah.
but nowadays, I mean, especially for younger bands, I mean, there's not an active rock station here anymore, and WMMS will only play they'll only play new bands, I believe, if you have to already be you have to have a top five single. You have to be in the top five for them to play you. Otherwise, they just stick to really early 2000s and before.
Yeah, which is a conundrum. There's a catch-22 there because how do you get to be top five without a station like WMMS playing you to begin with, and there's no MTV video support like we used to have. So it's pretty tough.
It really is, but I got to say, what a real honor it is to have you on. I mean, obviously, like I said, when you came on, you've been a part of so many legendary bands. And as a kid, when I was first getting into music, I was probably 13 or so, and I'm still a younger guy. I'm in my 20s, but so I got in, around 2007, 2008. But you're really one of the first musicians I feel like anybody probably discovers and comes across when they start getting into, hard rock and metal. You've been around for so long. And I remember seeing you, I think you were on a number of the VH1 Classic, like some of their countdown shows and stuff back in the day. I remember seeing you on there a lot. So really is a pleasure to have you on and have you on here. I mean, your career is so legendary. It's really remarkable.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm looking at the display behind you. What am I looking at?
Really just a bunch of music toys and so I mean a lot of Motley Crue stuff. I got some. I don't know if you
Oh,
can see it.
awesome.
There's some Bill and Ted action figures. I'm sure you remember those movies from back in the day.
Oh yeah,
Um,
oh yeah.
and actually, on this show, I wanted to get into it a little bit later, but I had Bob Marlette on maybe about a year ago. I think you
Oh
guys
wow.
are pretty good friends, and there's some stuff that he brought up that I wanted to get to. But he wrote the I'm sure you know this, but for those who don't know, Bob Marlette, the legendary producer, he also wrote the song that saves the world at the end of the first Bill and Ted movie.
Bob and I, we have a long, long history dating back to the 70s when we started playing together, I believe in 1976, 77, around that time. And I moved in with him into his basement of his family's house in Lincoln,
Lincoln,
Nebraska,
yeah.
which is where his family, yeah. And we toured the whole Midwest. As a matter of fact, Frankie Banali was a part of that too, and our drummer in Quiet Riot. And then we decided to like, okay, it's time to go to LA and be rock stars. So we packed it up. We got a U-Haul, one of those U-Haul hitch little
Yeah.
trailers, attached it to his dad's station wagon, and just drove from Lincoln, Nebraska, all the way to LA.
Well,
And the rest is history. We're here.
he he had some great stories about those days that I wanted
Oh
to
yeah.
ask you about, which I guess
Oh
we'll
yeah.
just jump
Yeah.
into that now. I mean,
Go ahead.
perhaps most
Go
notably,
ahead. Go ahead.
aside from probably the funny one was he was saying, you know, you go back in those days, you guys had no money at all, so you would go to
No.
you guys would go to the Rainbow. And he said you
Mhm.
guys would have to pick up chicks so you could have somewhere to stay, and then get them to buy you dinner and breakfast. But then the best part of that story, he said, was when you guys were leaving in the morning. He said you'd go through their closet and find something that, you know, in their closet that would look decent on you guys, and take their clothes because things were so tight back
Yeah.
in the day, which was just
Yeah.
an incredible story. I mean, it's just so funny
Yeah.
the way he
Well,
told it.
I mean, we were all in survival mode. When you arrive in LA and there's not really a big music scene that pays a lot. People, musicians will come from all over the world to go to LA to showcase for the labels, and they took advantage of that. The clubs took advantage of that. It says, hey, if you play in my club, there's going to be all of these big executives from the labels. So you're going to be showcasing for them. That means you're going to be either you're going to get enough money to pay your crew and for the equipment getting to the venue. You're not going to make any money, but look at all the exposure you're going to get. You guys can be big stars from playing in our club, and that was the norm. You understood that, And the whole thing about, well, I mean, if you look at rock fashion from the '80s, it's a bunch of guys wearing girls' clothes,
Sure, of course. Yeah.
and the MTV videos, because that's what we did. We weren't the only ones. It was everybody. Everybody did that. Anything that we did, it was a playbook. This is what you have to do to survive in LA. And there was a community of very willing ladies who saved us all by taking care of us. But then again, that goes back to like even before we got there, the '70s with Led Zeppelin, the Who, all the British bands that were coming into Los Angeles and hanging out of the Rainbow. Rainbow opened up at around 75, 76, which is when, or 74, something like that. The Rainbow Bar and Grill was something else before, and then it became this hangout for the rock musicians. When I got there the first time in '76, it was mind blowing. I'm of course I couldn't afford to buy pizza or anything, so I'm just hanging, which is a lot of us did. Uh, just hang, and at 2 o'clock in the morning they would shut the place down. So you will go outside into the parking lot, which is much larger than it is now because they have built outdoor dining, especially during COVID, in the parking lot. But back then it was just a big parking lot dividing the Rainbow Bar and Grill and the Roxy. And, cars were parked. They have valet parking. So there's a bunch of people, everybody from the inside that they would turn the lights on and kick everybody out because of the curfew, 2 a.m. curfew. And then everybody just like your last attempt to hook up was in the parking lot. And it happened a lot, And so I'm there, I'm hanging, looking at the possibilities, and I see this crowd, this sea of people parting ways, opening up because there's a car coming down, and I'll never forget this. It was a metallic green BMW, and it was driving slowly past the people, and there's Keith Moon, spread eagle on the hood, and Ringo Starr driving it. And I thought, I am home. This is what I always dreamt about and would read in magazine. This is it. The possibilities are endless here. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's an incredible
Yeah.
story.
it was a wow. I mean, you have to hang out every night. I mean, that was our social network. We didn't have the internet. So now you have to be present. You got to be there every night at the Rainbow because you never knew where you were going to miss what contact, what somebody you bump into. Hey, I'll tell you another story. I This is either 76 or 77, the second time that I came back. I'm going up and down the stairs to go to the bathroom at the Rainbow. Bathrooms are upstairs, and I bump into this guy coming down the stairs, and he stops me. He says, "Hey, how you doing, man?" Oh, and then he starts telling me about his band and and how the first record were going to be like just like the Led Zeppelin first album. And I'm looking at this guy. Of course, I have no idea who he is, and he's telling me this and this, and I'm going through my head. Wow, this guy, he's really full, man. And they say, okay, man, well, good luck with that. And I just kept going. Then somebody says, hey, I didn't know you knew Eddie Van Halen. And I go, who's that? I just got into town and I had no idea. But this guy, what I'm trying to say is everybody hang out with everybody and everybody, wanted to share. This is what my band is doing. This is what we're going to achieve. It's kind of like it would teach us, by sharing information and by making yourself accessible, you're giving everybody else hope that you too can make it. And you can, but of course, in my case, I had no idea who my teacher was or who was trying to share this information with me.
Sure.
It just happened to be Eddie Van Halen,
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. Well, one of the other things that Bob had mentioned was that, and this would be pre-Quiet Riot, there was a band that featured yourself, Bob Marlette, Frankie Banali, and Pete Castle on guitar. And then I guess what was kind of surprising to me was Tony Childs on vocals is what he was saying, which, you talk about that for a little bit?
Yes. I mean, there's so much to that story that I'm not going to go into the dark part of the story. But Tony and again, we were all in survival mode. So, we meet Tony in the parking lot, the Rainbow parking lot. Lovely. She was, I think, maybe 16, 17 years old. And we were in our early 20s. And so I was like, yeah, we're looking for a singer. Oh, yeah, I'm a singer. Okay, great. And then, we were all, like I mentioned, there was a network, a community of ladies that any musician that would come into town, they would take them in. And then, you might hit it off with them and then you guys become a couple. Or you get passed on to another one of the network of ladies, right? So I wound up in like 4 or 5. It's kind of like being fostered. Like if you foster a puppy,
Right.
okay, when somebody else foster this puppy and take care of them, and until you find a home.
Sure.
So it was just like that. But with wannabe rock stars who just got into town. And so this was the first time that we could actually gather the band under one roof. So Bob, Frankie, and I moved in along with Tony into this apartment, Melrose and Sweetser in Hollywood. And how we were able to pay for the rent is because she had a friend who was pregnant. So she would take her urine, pregnant urine, and go to welfare and claim that, I need some financial assistance.
Oh, wow.
And that paid for her rent.
Wow. Jesus God. What a story. Wow. That's, geez.
Yep.
And Pete Castle.
Again, survival mode,
Yeah.
Pete Castle was local. He was local from LA, from El Segundo. So he did not need a place to stay, so he was fine. Uh, Frankie and I, we used to walk through the rainbow from Sweet Mills and Sweet, which is about maybe a couple of miles, wearing 6-inch heel stilettos, which is where everybody wore at that
Sure.
time,
Yeah.
And we would go through payphones. I don't know if you know what a payphone
Oh,
is.
of course.
It's a
Yeah.
phone, public phone,
Yeah.
and you got to put quarters in it to make a phone call. So we will walk and look into every payphone, and we would find loose change, coins, and we would gather like maybe $1.50 and go buy plain wrapped wine at the market, and it's a box. It's a box of wine, and it just said wine, and it would say red. Sometimes it would say white, and we would buy one of those for $1.50 and drink it on our way to, as we're walking on our way to the rainbow. And by the time we got there, we had a buzz.
Jeez, wow, what a different time. Things are so much different nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Christmas in that apartment, and we did not have a tree. And damn it, we were going to have a Christmas tree. So Frankie and Bob and I, we got in his father's station wagon, and Bob drove. I was the lookout, and Frankie was in the back with the hatch open, down of the station wagon. So Frankie goes, "Okay, we're gonna go to this market here where they have the trees outside, and we're gonna circle until I find one that is gonna be the perfect tree for us." So we're circling, and Frankie goes, "Okay, stop now." So he was wearing gloves, leather gloves, and he grabs the Christmas tree, and he tells Bob, "Okay, let's go, let's go." So Frankie dragged this Christmas tree like for about a mile back to the apartment, right on the street.
Yeah,
There's just a
yeah.
tree hanging on the street, right? And by the time he got there, it was like it became like one of those Snoopy Christmas trees. It went from like a regular tree to like this a branch. But that was our Christmas tree.
Oh man, that's funny. Wow.
Oh yeah,
Well,
oh yeah.
the last thing on Bob, and then we'll move on. He just gave so much. He's had so many good stories about you that I wanted to ask you about, so that hopefully you could elaborate on. But I guess this would be maybe late '80s, early '90s. You had the band Sun King, and
Oh yeah,
John Five was actually your guitar player. I mean, this
yeah,
was, of course, way
yeah.
before anybody really knew who he was. And I think the band was even signed. And then Bob said you gave him a call to kind of help things get going with the band. And then in turn,
Mm.
he ends up stealing John Five basically out of your project and goes on to start his own band with him, Red Square Black.
Yeah, actually, he didn't steal it. I mean, the band imploded. It got to a point that this what happened. It was in the early '90s uh, when we started the Slip of the Tongue tour, Whitesnake. At the very beginning, David announced to the band that he was going to take a break, uh, and he had no idea what the future held for Whitesnake. So everybody started making their own plans, and mine was to put a young band together. Uh, and so I started looking for musicians in Los Angeles, and I saw this 19-year-old musician that just I knew had all the qualities that would make another an ex Guitar Hero, you know. Go that's what I was looking for. And John Lowry, he didn't have a number yet. He had Marilyn Manson is the one that gave me the number.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started playing, and we get signed to Giant Records. And this is before Nirvana came out. So we're still doing kind of like 80s arena rock, right? And so we're signed, and Nirvana happens, and grunge happens, and the record company goes, you're going to have to do something which is it led to us changing the vocalist because our vocalist had a very 80s type of voice, very MTV friendly, and that MTV turned their back on 80s bands, and we thought, well, this is not going to work. We need some, and the record company actually brought a singer and says, this guy I think will be a really good fit. By that time, the vision that we had as a band was kind of like blurred. It was like it was not laser focused anymore. It was like, oh my god, okay. And it was really interesting looking back at it. I could have really taken a look at let's say Soundgarden and go, you know what, this is very reminiscent of Black Sabbath. What they're playing, it's darker and it's heavier. I already did that with Ozzy. I understand this. I could really go in that route, but no, I decided to keep going the way I was going, you know. And are you there?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here. Yep.
Yeah. And so what happened was that, I said, you know what, I need some help. So I reached out to Bob, and by the time that the whole thing, it just fell apart. It was like, no, I don't want to, I cannot pursue this. This is not really me. The way it was being pulled, the way I felt at the time, I couldn't relate to it. I couldn't connect with it. So the band broke up. And then he just kept working with John. But so it wasn't like we show up one day at rehearsal. Okay, well, we got to look for a guitar player because
Right,
Bob
right.
Marlette stole our guitar. No, it would never happen like that. No, no.
Do you still have a relationship with John Five these days?
Oh yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, a while ago, I just did his documentary that I'm sure by now is going to be ready to go out. To be released.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy how
Yeah,
I mean he's established quite a name. Were you surprised at all when you heard that he
yeah.
was going to join Motley Crue a couple years ago? Did that shock you at all?
No, 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 no. First of all, I don't get shocked anymore about anything.
Well, sure, of
Second of
course.
all,
Yeah.
he is the right guy. If Mick Mars is not going to be in the band, then you need a guitar player, and John Five is the perfect guitar player if Mick Mars is not going to be there.
No, I would agree, and I actually went out to I went to their first ever show with him, and yeah, I feel like if there's anybody, I mean, you can't really replace Mick Mars, but if ever there was a guy to do it,
Yeah,
it would be John Five.
yeah. And I will expand on that. I mean, I know how well rounded as a musician John Five is. So I would say for any band, John Five would be the perfect guitar player.
Well, yeah, I mean everything. He's at Manson, Rob Zombie, now Motley. I mean, and then his solo stuff where he gets into the
Okay.
bluegrass kind of stuff. I mean, he's really a
And right after we finished playing, he joined Jane Whitland from the Go-Go's because we shared the same management. So that was the connection. And then he played with Katie Lang.
yeah. That's I
Come
forgot
on,
about.
how
Yeah,
much
that's
more
right.
diverse you can get from
Yeah,
Marilyn Manson to Katie Lang?
yeah.
He can play anything with anybody. Yeah.
So I want to talk about Quiet Riot for a little bit, and I wanted to ask you about rejoining the band back in late 2021 because obviously you've been in and out of the band a number of different times over the years. This most recent time, of
Hmm.
course, of rejoining came following the passing of Frankie. But when you're discussing coming back into the band with his wife after he had passed, how long does it take you to? Because I know you wanted to have a little grieving period, so. How long does it take you to reach the point of, all right, I'm ready to do this? Or I guess as you put it, okay, it's time for me to come home. Because I guess it was probably about a year or so in between his passing and you rejoining. So is that about how long it took? And were you ever were you ever kind of leaning towards not coming back before you decided ultimately to return?
Well, Frankie passed away in 2020, and about a few days after he passed away, his wife Regina asked me to come over the house, and that's when she mentioned about that Frankie wanted me to come back to the group after he passed away. To come back after he passed away. He told her before he passed away, but okay. So at that time, this is 2020. This is kind of like pretty much in the midst of COVID, the lockdown. You know, so what happened was I was in another group, the Guess Who, and you know, once I make a commitment, I have to fulfill it. You know, that's why I've been able to sustain a career for over 40 years now, because I never walked out on anybody. I make a commitment, no matter what's going on, I stick to it. I fulfill my commitment, and if I need to move on, I move on. Uh, so I told her, look, I cannot do it right now because we have these dates that were postponed, and I have to fulfill them. So let's see how this COVID thing is going on next year. And then, if once I'm able to fulfill my commitments to the Guess Who, then we can sit down and talk about it again. And yeah, it took about a year to do that because, this is 2020. He passed, Frankie passed in August 2020. There was not even a vaccine yet available, I mean, widely, like
Sure.
you could go and get your vaccine. And so by the following year, things were easing off. I did the shows with the Guess Who, and things. Okay, I'm fulfilling my commitment here, and that's when I made myself available. So that's how it happened. About grieving, if you would have asked me that 40 years ago, like when Randy passed away, I would have not have the same perception about the responsibility that we musicians who are left behind, the responsibility that we have to celebrate the music and the memory of those who pass on. So for me, it's more about celebrating them than actually grieving. Yes, there's a grieving period. But then again, you have to look at the responsibility of going out there and carrying on, especially if they request that you do that for them.
In the prior to that, in the previous, I guess it was almost 2 decades that you were not a part of the band, with Chuck Wright being the band's bassist for a majority of those years. Were you ever offered a different time to rejoin the band, but you declined?
No, I was not.
So just a few years ago then. What was it that?
Yeah, but then again, I participated in the documentary. I played on some tracks for the album 10. I hung out with Frankie frequently. I was part of whatever renegotiation we're having to do with prior contractual obligations. We remained best friends.
What was it that caused all of the, the band had a frequent amount of lineup changes over the years. Was that a particular thing that was always sort of overarching and casting a dark cloud on the band over the years? Or was there just always just a large amount of dysfunction between all of the members in the band over the years?
That's a great question. And I can only speak from my own experience. Let's see, when I joined the band in 78, it broke up because Randy went to join Ozzy. While I was in the band, nobody got replaced. It was the same 4 guys, Drew Forsythe, Randy Rhoads, Kevin DuBrow, and me. Then the band broke up. Then I came back for what became the Mental Health record. And from the time that I was in the band from 82 to 85, it was still the 4 of us, Carlos, Frankie, Kevin, and me. Then I came back in 1997 to 2003. Again, it was Carlos, Frankie, Kevin, and me. Now that I'm in this version of the band, it's actually the band that existed while Frankie was alive, with the exception of Chuck Wright, which I'm playing the bass.
Sure.
For that. So I now, for when I came back in 2021, I did my first dates. I did three shows in 2021. It's the same lineup as when Frankie was there. I'll rephrase that, when Frankie was alive, because Johnny Kelly has been in the band for 5 years, and he was basically a substitute for Frankie while Frankie was going through chemo, because Frankie never gave up on the idea of that he was never going to play again. So he was fighting it, fighting the cancer. So, but it got to a point that it's like Frankie told him, "Listen, I don't think can you be the permanent member in the group?" And that's what Johnny. So he's been there for 5 years. So it's the same guys, Jizzy, Alex, who's been in the band for 20 years or more, and Johnny and me. So while I've been in the band in those versions of the bands, there's never been a member change. It's always been from the very beginning that I start that version of the band to the end, it all remained the same. So I have no reference for what happened while I wasn't there.
Oh, so maybe in a way you were really the glue that held everything together. Since I mean, I guess I never realized that it was the same lineup every time you were in the band. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm. So no, I mean, but I just mentioned that because to give you it's a great question, but I got to tell you the reality of it.
Sure.
Nobody was replaced or changed while I was in the band.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but when the band originally disbanded, and then Randy went to Ozzy, and you started playing with Ozzy, and then when Randy tragically passed away, that was actually kind of what led you to go back to Quiet Riot, right? Because you went back to work on the song Thunderbird with them, which is sort of a tribute to Randy, and then that doing that song then turned into you doing a majority of the mental health record, and eventually just rejoining the band, and that's when things started really taking off. Is that right?
Yeah. And just to give you a little bit more background on that, when Randy left in '79, the name Quiet Riot ceased to exist as a band. Kevin put his own band called Dubrow, and then everybody around that time was doing multiple projects, trying to get a record deal, because what happened was new wave and punk came in, and it became tougher for us rock guys, the guys who have been playing the same music, inspired by British glam rock from the '70s. We were not getting booked at the clubs, so we had to go further outside of it, the Hollywood area, to get gigs. And we had to make a living somehow. So I was playing in a band called Angel also. We were, at the time when I joined the band, we were not signed, so I was struggling with that, but I was busy doing that. But 8 months before I joined Ozzy, I moved in with Kevin, and I started playing in Dubrow. I became the bass player, Dubrow is the missing link between the Randy Rhoads Quiet Riot and the mental health version of Quiet Riot. It's Dubrow. And so I was living with Kevin, and I was doing that until the day that I joined Ozzy. I went from sleeping on the floor, waking up in the morning, sleeping on the floor, on his floor, to getting the gig, and then I moved in with Ozzy and Sharon up in the big house,
Oh, wow.
her family's mansion in the Hollywood Hills. And so that's '81, April '81. So Randy passes away the following year, March 19th. And then I lost all the joy of making music, because my musical, my mentor, my best friend. Randy had a few best friends. He was best friend with Kevin too, and some other people, but he happened to be my best friend also. So losing Randy, and then so many things connected with this passing, that just nobody in that Ozzy family was ever the same, and we're still struggling with it. I mean, I've learned certain tools, through life coaching, that how to deal with grief and loss, and so on. What does it really mean? I've got a whole different perception 40 years later than I did back then. So, so I get the phone call. Okay, so I'm in LA getting ready to record "Speak of the Devil." All my equipment is gone. It's on its way to New York, and I got my practice bass with me. And I get a call from Kevin, and it says, "Listen, how would you like to come down to the studio to record Thunderbird? There's a possible record deal here." The band was still called Dubrow at the time. and I was still a member of Ozzy. So I go, sure. So I come down, and there's Frankie Banali, who I first started playing with Frankie 10 years before that. I met him on November 18th, 1972, on my birthday in South Florida. We started playing together immediately, and we left Florida during the disco era, which leads us to the Bob Marlette experience
Yeah.
of going to the Midwest and putting that band together and play. We lived together in Lisle, Illinois, and played out of that whole circuit of Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin. You know, so so uh, so there's Frankie, and I go, oh wow, this is unbelievable. This is great. We're finally in the studio playing together after you know all these years. And so playing with Frankie, playing with Kevin, Carlos, I had never met him before. So but I knew about him from his band Snow. So it was kind of like, this is what I've been missing all this time since I lost Randy. Because there's a big difference when you're in a band. And I was starting out. I was in a journey. I was not, but then again, I'm playing with Ozzy, who had been around with Black Sabbath. He was in a different part of his musical career journey. Tommy Aldridge, the same thing. He had been playing with Black Oak, Arkansas, and Pat Travers. So here I am. I'm starting out. I have not, I'm here in somebody else's band. Like Tommy, his band was Black Oak, and and Pat Travers too, I guess. But Ozzy, his band was Black Sabbath.
Sure.
I didn't have my band. My band was Quiet Riot. That were there from the very beginning. Roughing it out, trying to get a record deal. So I needed that in my life. I needed to like make it on my own, or with our own band, making it, be part of that building process. You're building the house right there. And I needed that in my life, and that's what it meant for me to be playing with Frankie and Kevin. We can build this, we can make this into our own band. And so I finished, we recorded in 2 takes. I knew the song from playing it in Dubrow. And then they asked me, "Hey, do you remember Slick Black Cadillac?" Which is the only song that made it from the Randy Rhoads era to the Mental Health Quiet Riot. Then 2 more Dubrow songs, "Love's a Bitch" and "Let's Get Crazy." So by the time I left the session, I'm still a member of Ozzy, but I recorded 4 songs. And to be honest with you, I thought we were making demos because it was just a little studio. It was not the Record Plant or Cherokee or any of the big studios in town. It was this little place. And so a couple of days later, I leave and I go back out with Ozzy to record "Speak of the Devil." That was the last time I played with Ozzy. And, just the thought of how getting the joy of making music again with Frankie and Kevin just kept lingering. And I said, you know what? I got to do this. So I finished my recording "Speak of the Devil" live at the Ritz 2 nights. Go back to LA and make the phone call, the hardest phone call I've ever made, to Ozzy's management, to Sharon, actually, letting her know that I was gonna leave Ozzy. They treated me great. They were wonderful with me. I was part of that family. But I needed to get the joy of making music again. I mean, everybody was trying to find their way how to deal with the grief of not having Randy on stage every night. It was now I get it. Now I understand. Now I can go on stage and understand the responsibility left upon us who are left behind. But 40 years ago, I had no idea. So I just went, followed my heart, and came back. And then this is documented on MTV interviews, and there's a book out called "Keep on Rolling," that once I came back, the band was renamed Quiet Riot. And that's where you get the beginning of the Quiet Riot mental health version.
Sure. Well, I know we're kind of running out of time here. A couple of other things I did want to get to as quickly as we can. Something I did not realize, but I did find to be super interesting is that following Randy's passing, I was reading your brother, Robert, was offered the gig to replace Randy and Ozzy, but then I guess the label at the time had already jumped the gun and brought on Bernie Torme and already paid him in advance and all that. But is I'd never heard that before. Was your brother really offered the gig at one point to replace Randy?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, what happened is there was so much chaos going on, and of course, it's 40 years ago. There's no texting, no emailing, no
Sure.
nothing. It was like, and so the focus was to find a guitar player, right? And among the many people that came down, you know, I suggested, why don't we bring my brother down, Robert? Because again, what we were trying to do at the time was to finish the tour. There were tour dates, so we're already committed. We needed to finish them with integrity and dignity for Randy's memory. It had to be done right. We just couldn't bring just anybody. And so there were not too many choices. I mean, a lot of people showed up to audition, but there were not too many choices. So so even before my brother came down, Bernie, he was like one of the first guys to show up, and we would be every day auditioning guitar players, and he would be sitting in a corner. And there was so much going on that we were not. It was painful to go through the audition process, because here we are playing without Randy and so on. So we're kind of like, we're not really hanging out or talking to people. So Bernie was sitting on the corner, and then my brother comes in, and they liked him. And the fact that I suggested my brother, they trusted just like they trusted Randy when Randy suggested me, they did the same thing with me. And so as Robert's being offered the gig, Bernie overhears that, and he says, "Excuse me, but I've already been paid, and I already struck a deal with the office in England." And so when they realized that this guy has already been hired to play, that's when things change, and they say, "Well, he's been paid, he's been hired, he's got it. So we have to go with Bernie."
Wow. But then when it wound up not working
It's a
out,
lot of chaos. Yeah,
yeah. Well, when it ended up not working out with Bernie, was there any reason in particular that they brought in Brad Gillis instead of going back to your brother?
Yes. By the time, see, because Bernie came in, but also Bernie was working on his solo record. So he got paid for the time that he was going to be available. So we knew we needed another guitar player. And so once we got rolling on tour, I realized that I had lost the joy of making music, because it's different being in a room auditioning guitar players. Once you go on that stage and you hear the intro of Die Rhythm Madman, because that's how we started the show, the lights go down, and you're wearing the same clothes, you're in the same castle, there's the same dwarf running around, there's all of us except for Randy. That's when the pain hits. That's when it's like, ah. And I just became robotic. I was a robot. I wasn't playing notes. I was just in survival mode. I was trying to survive every single show. So when it became it became known to us that Bernie was getting ready to leave, I told my brother, "Listen, we're still looking for a guitar player, but I do not recommend you joining, because I'm not going to be here. I got to move on." I had no idea how it was going to happen, how I was going to do it, but I just knew that I could not withstand that pain any longer.
And then I guess it was so it'd be 30 or so years after that you finally did end up playing in a band with your brother with Jeff Tate, right? That was around 20.
Yeah, with Jeff Tate. Yeah,
so, yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of like pretty much my biggest reason for doing that. I mean, I'm a fan of Jeff. I'm a fan of the other members of Queensryche. but nobody likes to get into one of those situations where there's two bands going out at the same time.
Right.
So what I found that the joy in it was that I was playing with my brother. Finally, being on a tour bus with him, which I had never done that before.
Yeah. Did you guys ever try to get anything going together, like early on?
We did up until he got married and he stayed in New Jersey, and then I wound up in Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska with Bob.
Yeah. Well, I know we're running out of time, so we'll wrap this up. But like we mentioned, there's a ton of Quiet Riot dates coming up, which you can check out at quietriot.band. This current lineup of yourself, Alex Grossi on guitar, who, like we said, has been in the band for 20 years or so. That was actually my first ever concert, was Quiet Riot in 2007. And I guess it was probably one of the last dozen or so shows that Kevin played, because it was in August of 2007. And if I recall, I think Kevin died in October of that year. But yeah, Alex was in the band at that point too, I believe. And now drummer Johnny Kelly and yourself, Jizzy Pearl on vocals. And he's doing, he does a great job singing these songs with you guys now. He's killer. It's
a great band. It's a great band, really. I mean, if Kevin and Frankie are not going to be there, it's a great band. I mean, I couldn't ask for better guys to go on stage and celebrate the memory of Frankie Banali, Kevin DuBrow, and Randy Rhoads, and the legacy of the band. It's really a blessing.
Well, make sure you check out Quiet Riot when they're on the road. I mean, it seems like you guys play about 2 to 3 shows a week, so I'm sure they'll be coming around soon. Rudy, thank you so much for coming on here, and would love to bring you back on when we have some more. I feel like we barely even scratched the surface. There's so much to talk about. So yeah, would love to have you back, and I appreciate you making the time.
Thank you, Logan. Had a great time.